the whole World Needs Men came to me. I was doing a Bible app devotional, and I think it was based on a book called The Men We Need. And I just had this, like, I just wrote down in my journals, like, the world needs men. And then I Googled, or I looked up a podcast, and I just looked up a podcast for the world needs men. It's like, let's see if that exists. And the first podcast that came up was an interview of the guy that wrote the devotional that I read. I was like, well, there's my sign, right? And so I just had this thing on my heart, but it sat there and kind of just kind of sat there for quite a while. Um, I, I feel like I've gone through um, a pretty dark space and come out the other side, like and have a life with my family that back then I couldn't have even painted right now. And it's not like, oh, because I'm making so much more money, or I'm dry. Like, it's like, no, because the connection that's there, right, and the peace that I feel, and in the gratitude and appreciation I have for myself. And so, on one hand, the idea behind the podcast is just to share some real stuff that I've gone through in hopes that it can help at least one other man that hears each of those podcasts. If I can help one guy shift his life by 1 degree, that could change the whole trajectory of his life. And so I feel like if God has brought me along this path to where I am now, for me to just bottle it up and not share any of it is a waste. And I think that one of the things I wrote down one day was the most dangerous pain that men have is the pain they hide. And until men like step out there, and you can call it being vulnerable, you can call it being honest and just real with each other, that hey, we're all dealing with and struggling with something. Like, until we have more men doing that, then everyone's going to just, all the men are just going to keep just shoving it down, suppressing it, sedating it, taking it out on people, and we're not going to get anywhere. But when you
Yeah.
look at all the statistics, and you look at the fatherless home, and you look at disconnected marriages, and boys being raised in the world where they don't even know like how to be a man or what that means, and questions around all of that, like, I just want to be, and you one of y'all mentioned salt and light before we got going. Like, we just need more men to step in and be light in the
Yeah.
world. There's plenty of darkness out there. Like, there's too much darkness. And so, like, there is such a drop in the bucket in terms of, or drop in the ocean, I should say, in terms of like the number of men actually speaking up and taking a stand for like what is good and right and true. And a lot of men that need to hear it. And so it's evolving as a project, and as a mission of mine. But at the end of the day, if a man shows up and is a better husband and father because he listened to one episode and heard one thing I said that connected, then that's the point of it.
Man, we are aligned in purpose. That was literally the exact same thing we said when we started this. So um, I'm glad that you're out there making it happen. Uh, you reference vulnerability. I almost think we need a separate word, because I think there's like two types of vulnerability, right? So there's like, I'm vulnerable, like, oh, I'm exposed, my enemy
Mm-hmm.
can hit my flank now. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
different type of vulnerability. I think that's why we have this negative association with it.
Yeah.
It's the opposite. It's a force multiplier. So in the military, we talk about force multipliers as something where it's like, it's this one thing and it makes everything more effective.
Mm-hmm.
That's what vulnerability is within brotherhood. And
Yeah.
so when guys actually open up, it is a force multiplier for the connection and for the strength that you gain. And it's not the vulnerability of I'm exposed to attack, because you're not. You're
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by brothers. You're in a place where there is protection and respect and understanding. And so when you're vulnerable in those situations, it breaks the ice for others to share, and it's a force multiplier for everything that you do. And so we almost need to like think of some other word, because it's not really being vulnerable in the sense of like you're weak. It's the exact opposite. It's strength. And
Yeah.
you
It
gain strength from others by default when that happens.
Yeah, it's almost like it causes more argument when you throw that word out. And I've intentionally not thrown it out during this because I didn't want it to like throw anyone off. But like I look, you look in the world of what's being pushed out for men. You've got on one hand you have apathy, right? Let's just abandon our call to be men on one side, and on the other you've got the abusive man who just takes all of his God-given authority and strength that should be used to serve and be a blessing to others, and he just takes advantage of it, right? So apathy on one, and abandonment and taking advantage of his authority and of his power on the other. But I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? And I almost think that, another way of looking at it is just humility. I mean, we have to
Yep.
set aside our ego, which is a lot of what separates us too, is, hey, I'm just going to put on this front that says I'm a perfect man that has it all figured out and
Yeah.
has it all right. And I've got all the biggest toys and bank account and all this stuff. And it's like, well, okay, all that can go away, but like show me someone who is humble and not in a weak way, but in a
Hmm.
way where they've got this deep level of strength that they're willing to expose their truth in hopes that it connects them and bring and adds strength to somebody else.
Yeah.
But you're right. Another word needs to be thought of because there's too much around that like I think we get caught up in rather than like the real
Yeah.
meaning behind what it's supposed to be
It's
for.
really I'm gonna quote Frankie Rousseau, who was on our show, and he said, "Living a life without pretense." And
Mm,
that's really what it is, right? You're putting down the act, like you said, right? The facade goes away. So again, it's not vulnerability. It's actually just Brandon. You talked about it the other night, right? The like the Japanese
Oh,
levels.
yeah, Matsuo no Kai,
Yeah.
which is like you have three faces that you wear. One is one that you wear in the public, and then there's one that you wear around your family, and then there's one that you only wear around yourself, which is the true, authentic person that you really are.
mm,
And the Japanese very much believe in that concept, and it's a pretty incredible thing. But I would say my word or two words for this vulnerability is courageous transparency,
mm,
because you're
Boom.
learning to be courageously transparent with your emotions and your feelings, and you're allowing somebody to sit in the mud with you, feel it, work through it, and then heal and move on stronger. Right? It's like, George is in the military, and he can tell you that anybody he's ever sat in the mud with in war is his brother. And so that's why it's called a brotherhood, because you're sitting through the crap with the other people, and you're struggling, and that struggle brings bondness. And so,
mm.
yeah, I think it's courageous transparency.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm really glad I kicked it over to Brandon to bail me out of that one because that was pretty
Eat your
epic right
heart
there.
out, Jordan
Courageous
Peterson.
transparency. I think that's going to go in the vernacular for sure.